Nigeria's new Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Wale Edun, addressed his first press briefing in the capacity last Friday, and in the course of that event outlined an 8-point agenda to guide the economic policies of the Tinubu administration.
There was a time when government had enough foreign exchange, it had enough naira revenue to meet its obligations and to provide the funding for growth of the economy. It had enough foreign exchange such that when people came in to invest and they needed to import raw materials, to import machinery, government could provide the wherewithal. And so what that points to is that we have a situation where if government doesn't have the money, it needs to facilitate and allow private funding, other sources of funding, such as foreign direct investment, domestic investment by Nigerians in all areas. And we saw some of that in Lagos when Mr. President was governor of Lagos. He opened up the power sector to private investment, the road sector to private investment, infrastructure, waste management, even cemeteries to private investment, because government didn't have the funds and there were those who are willing and able to provide jobs and grow the economy by making those investments. So that is a pointer to the fundamentals of the president's strategy. Private investment, and worldwide there are huge flows of foreign direct investment once you give investors the right conditions. Specifically, where are we headed under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? He has pointed out in 8 priority areas where he's going to take Nigeria. And his key priorities are to improve the lives of Nigerians by providing food security, by ending poverty. His plan for the economy is economic growth, job creation, access to capital, particularly consumer credit that makes goods affordable to the average Nigerian. And is concerned about utilizing our human resources, our vast, capable human resources, by focusing on inclusivity, women, youth, making all have the opportunity to come to the table and contribute to the growth of the economy and society.
Now, I'm now being joined by Dr. Tope Fasua, an economist, to try to help us pinpoint what could be the key points of this federal government recovery template, including the proposal to target a greater volume of remittance from Nigerians living in the diaspora. How can an improved political situation here at home help in this particular respect, given the current discordant voices on the political plane? Who will bail the cat and take the first bite? How reassuring does this government sound with this pronouncement thus far? And does it have the right mix of personnel to execute these plans? I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on The Morning Show. All right, Dr. Fasua, let's start it off first of all.
Good morning.
Yes, let's start it off on this note. Senator Adams Oshiomhole has said President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherited a terrible economy from the Buhari administration. Can we all agree that the last 8 years was disastrous and a lot of fixing needs to be done at this moment in time? Or do we keep pushing that particular conversation away? Talk to us about this.
Right, thank you very much. I think Senator, former Governor Adams Oshiomhole spoke instinctively, perhaps forgetting that it's the same party he's talking about. Whatever the case may be, the president actually said something that's more profound. He said, listen, I looked for this job, don't pity me. I signed up for it. You know, whatever I see, whatever I'm going to see or do, you know, it's all on me. And I think that's good leadership, which takes us away from the former model that we were used to. I recall that former presidents have been used to pointing fingers. I've not seen one instance where the president will say, well, I didn't cause the problem. Go and meet the guys that created the problem. Look, when you run for elections in a country and you have the capacity to win and you win, the assets and liability of that country becomes yours. And I think the president, being an accountant, has also used that same phrase, that the assets and liabilities that he has inherited are his to manage, to ensure that by the time it's done, the assets will majorly outstrip the liabilities. And that's the continuance of government. That is the way it works.
No, Dr. Fasua, I'm being direct to my question. I'm just asking a question. How would you appraise the last 8 years in terms of economy for the Buhari administration?
Yeah, the last 8 years, well, it had its own challenges, a lot of them, and I think I've documented quite a number of that in my writings and also my outings on your show and elsewhere. It had a lot of challenges. Initially, I think there was some level of lethargy and, if you like, some sort of lack of energy that afflicted the government from the beginning. I remember that they took quite a bit of time to form government, to get ministers on board. It took about 7 months. And that's why they wrote in the new revised constitution that, look, you shouldn't spend more than a certain number of time before you bring your ministers. And I think the new government has kept to that. And then, of course, there was a downturn in crude oil prices in 2016. As much as I believe we should move away from fixation on crude oil, but at that point, given the lack of energy and some sort of, I don't know whatever really happened to the former president, but then he got ill, crude oil prices went down, economy went into a recession, we had to devalue the naira based on promises that everything was going to be all right. But in time, even that one, we lost track of it. So to a large extent, and then by 2016, we managed that recession, 2016, 17, 18. It looked like we were coming out of it. By 2020, COVID struck. And COVID is a once in a whole lifetime kind of event. In fact, once in several lifetimes. I'm not sure anything as devastating to economies like that have happened. Many countries are sitting on theirs, on their own issues and patching it up. Almost every central bank in the world, if not every central bank in the world, is sitting on some sort of COVID bond or COVID palliative or COVID intervention, which is in trillions of dollars, several tens of trillions of dollars around the world. The US alone is sitting on about 5 trillion of that. The UK is sitting on about $500 billion or more in terms of dollars of that. So I would probably say that given the same pervading lack of energy, and we did not see a lot of dynamism, for example, ministers were appointed and they sat for a whole 8 years, maybe there was no fear that to say that if I wasn't performing, I'll be taken out. And I think because of that, by the time COVID came, that was the wrongest kind of government that could have waded through such a hugely challenging time. And so we saw what we saw. So, but they've done their bit and gone. And what we need to be doing now is to be careful that we don't begin to look at even that era as the good old days, as we are wont to. Every new government in Nigeria, people start to say, oh, I wish we could go back to the past. I wish we could go back to the past. I think that this is the time to break that jinx and finally move forward. And in doing that, what will have to happen is there needs to be a very keen focus on the well-being of the people, which is what I heard Mr. Chief Wale Edun speak about in this clip that he just showed, being the eight-point agenda of the president. I heard a lot of things about people, about human capital development, about food security. These are things that deal directly with the people. And I would say that for the next, as far as the eye can see, that should be the focus.
Definitely. And talking about looking towards the future and being solution-oriented, Dr. Tope, the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, emphasized the need for private investment in stabilizing and growing the economy. Can you elaborate on how this shift towards private investment could positively impact Nigeria's economic landscape? And how does encouraging domestic investment by Nigerians in various sectors contribute to the economic growth, as well as, I would say, what incentives or policies would facilitate this faster? Because time is of the essence when we think about it, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a triple-edged question. Probably we'll start from the last one. So how does, what kind of policies will assist people to invest more in the economy? So certainly you want things like security to be very good. Yesterday, I read where the new IGP, Mr. Egbetokun, was saying that, look, we need about 190,000 more policemen in order to properly secure the country. I think that's something that we've always known, that, look, we are not well staffed in that department. And of course, we have this problem where a lot of the policemen go around as private security guards for people. Every time the IGP will speak about that, sometimes it keeps going back to the status quo ante as well. So if you had good security, and of course, if you also take care of the effective demand by making sure that people actually have money to spend on things that are local, and on things that they need that can be provided locally, then you're on course to achieving that. In terms of the domestic economy, the domestic investment, I think perhaps for the first time, we're going to be hearing the fact that indeed Nigerians, we are so externalized in terms of our thinking. I mean, I've always said it's like Nigerians actually take their monies abroad for different kind of investment. In fact, there was a time in Canada, they had to ban Nigerians, especially, from buying houses in Canada. Imagine that, to say the government brought out a policy that, look, we're going to stop foreign investment in because these guys are driving up the prices, and young people that are growing can no longer afford to get houses in Canada. And Nigerians were a major culprit of that. So now when you take your own money abroad to go and invest, and then we still go back the same abroad and tell people to come and bring money here, they must know there's a reason why you're always taking your money abroad. And I think that issue really needs to be discussed this time around, to say, why can't we keep our money in this country? Look, we talk about issues of corruption and all of that we have in Nigeria and elsewhere. But I see that the difference between our corruption and the corruption elsewhere is that the corrupt people elsewhere, and there are corrupt people everywhere in the world, in every economy, but they tend to keep their money more in their country, doing things, creating businesses, employing people than we do here. All right, so that takes care of the domestic investment aspect. We need to invest more in our country. And you know what? It's an open sesame. Nigeria is an open sesame. Every challenge we have, including this security challenge. I mean, you hear people like Tom Polo, what he's doing in the oil sector. I think, again, last week there was another vessel that was caught and destroyed with 350,000 liters. I hope they removed the 350,000 liters of whatever product was there before burning it, and I hope that is accounted for as well. People like Tom Polo are making money in the security sector. People like Asari Dokubo are getting involved in the security sector. That's even as technical as that sector is, not to talk of the other sectors. The food sector, value addition to food, canning our food, going into the secondary market with our food, for example. The textile sector is an open sesame. I heard that only 24 out of more than 80 textile companies are managing to produce very marginally. So even if you think about food, shelter, clothing, let's not talk about the housing sector, where we've not done almost nothing in recent past. And luckily now, they've split that ministry, splitting works from housing. How can you combine works and housing when we have such huge problems with our roads that we can't even take care of our infrastructure? Our bridges are falling down where they stand, and then of course you match that with housing, and we're supposed to have so many millions of housing deficit in terms of people that can't find good places to live. So I think that we're getting somewhere, and so now the private sector is very important. That's your first question. Very, very important, because government cannot find all the money. Government will never find all the money to invest in everything it needs to invest in. I mean, we have about a deficit of, we see about 17 trillion in terms of infrastructure. Where is government going to get all the money? I mean, even if you were very efficient with your taxation system and your revenue collection system, you probably would not. So you need leverage. However, but you need to also appeal to the patriotism of your people to say, you know what, we do have money, please bring it home. But how do you begin to convince even people who have gone into the diaspora? That's a huge challenge on its own. Many people have gone because they felt disenchanted with the country. And many people also have gone because they have very little information, because they think that life is supposed to be that easy. But the countries are going to, they've also really, really suffered to get where they are. So therefore, you must have a combination of ideas and policy to draw them back, to let them continue to be proud of their country, to let them understand the history of how countries develop, of how nations evolve. So that they can bring their money in voluntarily without you having to do so much work trying to convince them and all of that. Yeah, that has been done in places like Ireland. Recently, there was a gentleman who visited Nigeria. I forget his name now, but he was in charge of, ensuring that I think it's what they call a networker or something of that sort. But for the country of Republic of Ireland, which has more than its current population in diaspora, because a lot of Irish people had to leave that country when there was plagues, there was famine and all of that. They are one of the most traumatized people, but they managed to capitalize on that to bring those people back and bring their investment back into their country. So again, it's a totally open vista. Nigeria is an open system. I mean, for every challenge you see, there's money to be made, there's business to be done, there's fulfillment to be had. Because at the end of the day, after taking care of your hygiene factor issues, then you begin to think about fulfillment. Many of the people who have traveled out of this country, I believe, if we do things right, they should come back, in good time, and perhaps even half and half. They should be eager to come back and go back to where they're coming from time to time.
All right, Dr. Fasua, permit me to just touch on something critical here. Of course, this has been making the news in the last 24 hours. What Wale Edu actually said about the Jonathan administration and the stability they witnessed in that particular time is in respect to the economy. And because he said that the last time our foreign exchange rates were stable was about a decade ago. And that actually, and he even pointed to the 2013-2014 period as to where things were almost at its optimum, whereby things were actually growing rapidly. And my own question is this. First of all, should Goodluck Jonathan be given his flowers? Because when the Buhari administration came in 2015, they berated him for lack of direction, lack of policies, and just complete recklessness. But right now, it's looking like that seems to have been our best time. Wale Edu has attested to this. Should we begin to borrow some leaves from what the Jonathan administration did for the economy? Because when you look at it, the FX rates were below 200 naira. And right now, we can't even say, because some are claiming it's between 900 and 1,000. Should we begin to probably look back and say, what did they do right? What did they do right that we can actually employ to make this nation better?
A couple of things. Whereas I believe that, of course, they did their own bit and left. And of course, Mr. Edu, of course, is also doing his own analysis of, but we have to be careful about one thing, lest we fall, into a trap, Even that era wasn't good enough. I think we have to probably begin to situate what exactly is it Nigerians what do we want? We want a country where we would have a much, much reduced level of malnutrition among our children. We go to many rural areas now, children are so lean, they can't. People are feeding children gari, which is total carbohydrates. We have more than 30 million cars in Nigeria. We can't even find milk for our children to grow. So we need to be evolving a new set of Nigerians. We need to be growing at much faster. Well, we posted 2.51% last quarter or thereabouts, which is not good enough, That's not what this is about. We're growing at almost 2.6% in terms of our population. So anything that's below that, not to talk of the fact that, we have so much to catch up with, so much investment in infrastructure and what have you to do. Our work is well cut out for us. That era, 2013-14, for me at best, was a mediocre era, not particularly something to aspire to. In fact, if you ask me, I probably will go back to 2006 and 7. In 2013 and 2014, growth rate averaged about 6.5%. The same thing happened about 6% or 6.2%. The same thing in 2006 and 7, growth rate was 6.0% and 6.5% for those 2 years as well. Inflation was equal. In fact, inflation in 2006 was 5.3%. Inflation in 2008 was 8%. Inflation in 2013 and 14 averaged about 6.5 to 7%. So indeed, if you look at the inflation rate vis-a-vis the growth rate, there wasn't much that happened in 2013 and 14. If you ask me, I would prefer, if you wanted to go back to the halcyon days, the days when there was a lot of good activity, 2006-7. Why? Because crude oil went to $140. We had so much money. We accreted our reserves to $62 billion in that era. In fact, in that era, we revalued the Naira. Naira became stronger. Under Governor Soludo, even though he also wanted to denominate the Naira, we begged him not to. Otherwise, we would have gone through the same trauma that Ghana went through. That was the year, 2007, that Ghana redenominated its cedi by removing 4 zeros. But they had reason. Because many people in Ghana, their annual salaries were in the billions of cedis. So they removed 4 zeros and they went back to 0.92 cedi to $1 in 2007. However, that also created some unforeseen consequences, because as we speak today, we're talking of about 120,000 cedis to $1. Take out 4 zeros, you go back to 12 cedis to $1. It started from 0.92, moving to 12. They've seen a lot more volatility in terms, and in fact, let's just call it fall, not volatility. They've seen precipitous fall in the value of their currency since 2007, which we did not see. So, we managed to do a lot of that in 2006. If we wanted to go back to the good old days, maybe we look at that, or even look back at 1986, when the Naira was doing almost $1.5 equaled 1 Naira. Look at where we are today. So, but you know what? All of this is good challenges for us. It's a good time to be alive, because these challenges provide good templates for us to work with and to put everything we have into it. And we need to move, I would probably say that we need to move much faster and more decidedly in terms of improving the lives of our people. So, President Jonathan has come and done his own. A great man, good gentleman, you hear him speaking very much like a great statesman these days. But look, let's forget that era. Now, the point is this. We want to be able to achieve what we've never achieved in this country in terms of growing the economy and delivering value for our people, in terms of repositioning the image of this country the world over, a very much battered image for no reason. We have no reason to have such a battered image. We even have no reason to be running all over the world. Let me say this and close. It's going to be difficult to convince people not to want to run away from Nigeria, because once you mention, if you tell someone you can go to the UK and earn £1,000, they're thinking, that is 1.1 million naira. That's a lot of money. But you know what? Except if you're earning 1.1 million naira here, you're as good as someone earning about £8,000 in the UK, or almost £10,000, the quality of life that you will live. There's something called purchasing power parity. That whereas you buy a can of Coke for £1, or buy for almost £2 a can of Coke in the UK, which is like 2,300 naira or thereabouts, we'll buy the same thing here for maybe 150 naira or 200 naira. What's the difference? Same Coke, and perhaps even we have better quality Coke than they do. I mean, I'm sure that we have better quality, Guinness, which you always look for. Even in the UK, they look for Nigerian one. So that's the thing. You would never be able to convince them, but they need to be very, very circumspect. We can't run and leave our country alone, because we have a lot to achieve here. And even if you leave this country, remember it's still your country. There's a reason why you're a Nigerian. You can never forget home. And there's a lot of value and fulfillment to be derived from investing back in your country.
All right, then. Thank you so much, economist Dr. Tope Fasua. Thank you for being here on the morning show. We appreciate your time and your analysis.